I'm Johan Falkman. Welcome to the show from the sphere of nothingness at Museo Espacio in Aguascalientes. Come, let's look at the exhibition. Most of the exhibition takes place in South Africa with the Zulus, but it all started with the death of my best friend, the Swedish poet Jacques Werup, and my mother, who died of Alzheimer's in 2016. From that, I started to create the portrait of Pope Francis I, and this will now be placed at the Ibero Institute in Mexico City. He's a representation of life, and this is the spark that ignited my whole exhibition in South Africa that lasted for 5 years. Come, let's look. I was inspired by the Bible, and so here we have the creation of man, Adam and Eve, paradise, and the expulsion from paradise, Adam and Eve being thrown out of the Garden of Eden, represented here by my Zulu models. And the angel, of course, that shows no mercy and that throws them out into life. Our ancestors, Cain and Abel, original sin, the grief of having killed your brother, the person that you love, the bad conscience that follows man throughout life. Here you have Abel, the murdered brother. My first encounter with South Africa, the royal family, the Nkosi, with all his relatives and all his soldiers. I took this photograph 6 years ago today, and it's presented here like a church cabinet. Here we come to the murder of Abel, Cain killing his brother with a stone. The blood of the murdered brother that is part of our blood, inherent in our system, original sin. The grief that we carry with us throughout life. The vision of the dead arising from their graves as presented by Ezekiel in the Bible. Come, let's continue. The conflict between the father and the young boy, Abraham and Isaac, the love of the young man, and at the same time, the commandment from God to kill your son, to prove your devotion to the Creator. And the intervenience of the angel. Here we have one of the films that we made in South Africa on the theme. This also connects to the story of Montezuma and the sacrifices that took place in Tenochtitlan 500 years ago. Come, let's continue. The Bible cannot really be explained by anybody. It's the story of life. It's the story of you. It's the story of me. And we cannot fully understand our existence. But there is an ambition through the book of life to describe what we are and what our ambition in life is or ought to be. Here we have the early biblical tales, Samson and the lion. Christ being fooled and prosecuted publicly outside of the temple. Here we have Christ surrounded by the comedians. The crucifixion of Christ as created in South Africa with one of my beautiful models, Sabelo. If we continue, we have the birth of Christ, also created in KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa. I work a lot with the theme of Etche Homo, see man. That is why all these South African models, all the Zulus are looking at you, asking you, begging of you to recognize them, to see them, to love them, as they see you and as they love you. Christ, the birth of Christ, is of course the symbol of their dreams coming true. They never give up hope that their lives will be better, that they will find a better tomorrow. And here that hope is symbolized by the birth of Christ. Here we have a Swedish version of the crucifixion and the Pieta. We have a South African Pieta, the death of Christ. Come, let's continue. Over here, we have a piece inspired by Siqueiros. In Mexico City, there's a fantastic museum called the Polyforum. And inside the Polyforum, Siqueiros created a very famous Mexican piece of art called the March of Humanity. And this is a version of the March of Humanity represented by my South African models, the men and women of KwaZulu-Natal, marching through life, chanting to us their song of life, inspired by the hope that is burning inside of them, the yearning for a better life, the yearning to be seen, the yearning to be taken seriously, to be loved, to be recognized, and to receive true dignity. If we walk through the big hall here, you see a gallery of portraits of my Zulu models. I lived with them for 5 years in South Africa, and together we created a theater of life. They became a mirror of life. They became a mirror of myself. I love them dearly, and they helped me to create this story about humanity. We can continue into this journey of humanity. Here again, you have a big collection of portraits. It's the South African models. And this again, if you read the text in Spanish, it's a summoning. They're asking you to take them into consideration, to see them, to take them seriously, to give them dignity by recognizing them, as they give you dignity by seeing you. You must imagine these people being for real, and here you can see yourself in the mirror, your own portrait, looking at yourself, as Christ once did, looking at you, asking you to see him as he sees you, realizing that we're the same. And by doing so, we can overcome racism and equality, by recognizing each other, by giving each other life and giving each other dignity. The Dance of Death, inspired by Dürer, created during the times of the plague in the 1300s. Relevant still today. Remember COVID. Remember HIV and the AIDS epidemic. The story of the models in the little village of Manga in South Africa continues. They will tell you about their lives. Come and see the show, read the text, read their poetry. Here is one beautiful poem of Alex, one of my young poems and models in South Africa. In this exhibition, you will wander through the modern life of the South Africans, your own life, mixed with the mythological stories from the Bible. All symbols of ourselves. Here you have again the dance of death, the triumph of the dark angel. The Bible is full of very cruel stories, stories that are forcing us to confront ourselves. This is one of them. The woman with 7 sons. It's a story about Persia conquering Jerusalem and humiliating the Jewish population. This story can be adapted to our modern life. Come and read about it. Come and see the films we have created on this theme, and you can learn much more about it. Here we have the stories of the kings. The tragic stories of the biblical kings. All of them failed in their mission to govern Israel. None of them could do it. None of them could fulfill what the people demanded of them. This is a symbol of ourselves. It's the challenges that we as men must face. Here you have one of the depictions of King Saul, who was killed together with his sons. Their bodies were decapitated and they were hung on the wall of Jabez. One night, the villagers defied the enemies and took down the bodies of their king and gave him and his sons a dignifying funeral. This painting is a story of struggle, but it's a story of victory. Here we have King Saul being haunted by nightmares, always paranoid. He was what we would call today a schizophrenic man. Still, he became the king of the Jews, the first Jewish king. Here we have Athaliah, the evil queen, who feared that her sons and nephews would take her crown away from her. So she had them all killed in one afternoon. This is the first painting I made in South Africa together with my models. And they asked me, Johan, can we as blacks be representatives of the Bible? Can we play these characters? And I said to them, of course, the Bible is about everybody. But isn't the Bible about white people, they asked me? I said, no, of course not. The biblical stories are your stories as much as they are mine, as much as they are Mexicans, the Asians, whatever you go in the world, Arabic. This book, these stories, is about all of us. Nobody owns the Bible more than anyone else. You are the best people to portray these stories. And so they did, and they loved it. And that is what you're seeing here at this museum. Here you have Queen Vasti refusing the invitation from her husband, played by Princess Nandi, the daughter to the Zulu king in South Africa. Here again you have the story of Eleazar from the book of Maccabees, and the story of the woman with 7 sons. Here you can see the woman confronting the Persian king and her sons being killed as a result of their confrontation. In here we have the book, the Room of the Kings. Like an opera, this story continues. The tragedy and the failures of the kings, the impossible task to govern people and their countries, which none of the biblical kings really could succeed with. Here you have, like a mausoleum, the room of the dead kings and their stories. Each individual king and ruler portrayed by my models. Here you have a portrait of Montezuma, also a ruler who failed in his task to lead his people. Here is the big chessboard, the game of life, the game of humanity. From the sphere of nothingness arise the kings, the queens, the sons, the daughters, the lovers, the poets, and the murderers. Here you have them, like in a Shakespeare play. Abel, Jesus, his follower, the disciple, the South African king, his wife, Tulani, young Saint Mauritius, the witch of Endor, Eve, Abraham, the sister of Nebuchadnezzar, Yankis, one of my models in South Africa, the Aztec king, Moctezuma, Rasputin, the devil, Adam, Job, Cain, all of them part of the great mystery and great game of life. I am nothing, my life is hopeless. Here you have the tragedy of the kings symbolized by my South African models. Some of them in a desperate situation, sometimes feeling that suicide is the only way out. The triumph of death, the cruelty of the despots, the cruelty of the leaders, the rulers who are suppressing the population throughout history. The tree of the kings, the tree of King Saul, from which so many of the rulers and so many of the people came to hang, symbolized by my models in South Africa. And to end the exhibition, we have King Saul taking advice from the witches of Endor. And when they summoned the Jewish prophet Samuel, Samuel told King Saul that tomorrow you will die and you will be one of us. You will become a ghost in the kingdom of death. Once again, a tragic ending to one of the biblical kings. Come and see this exhibition. It goes on till October, the 1st of October, for 6 months, starting today. I hope to see you here. Welcome.